though?
No!
Hypercharge!
Man, not gonna lie, that's my favorite part of the entire Brawl Talk. So, you already know, today I'll be trying to rank all of the new Hypercharges released on the Brawl Talk from worst to best as fast as humanly possible before anyone else can do it before me. Yes, this is my time to shine, not gonna lie. With that being said, be warned because there could be mistakes. I have no idea about the rates and the damage buffs or shield buffs, etc. In 6th place, we have Ash's Hypercharge. I just want to say that I don't think the Hypercharge is bad, not at all. But considering the competition, I mean, this one seems the least interesting one and also possibly the weakest. Because characters that can just pierce through the rats, it will be exactly the same thing. Like, Poco will still one-shot all of the rats. Obviously, you will get a crazy amount of rage, but I generally think they could have been a little bit more creative with Ash's Hypercharge. Like, it feels pretty mid to me, just double the super. But obviously, Ash being Ash, he will just get an insane value of the stat increases, and that's, I would say, the main reason why I would say in the overall this Hypercharge would probably be a B tier. And considering how Ash is right now, this Hypercharge could possibly put him in A tier or something. It depends a lot on the charge rates. So yeah, overall I'm expecting it to be like 35% rates. So I think that this Hypercharge should be around the B tier. Nothing that special, honestly even a little bit boring, but it is a good Hypercharge for Ash. Next on the list we have Melody, and this one, it depends a lot, as usual, on the charge rate, because I could see this one being very broken. But at the same time, I don't understand very well why I see a lot of 600 damages taken by the enemy in this clip, which I am worried if that is the damage that the Hypercharge floating nodes around you deal, then that could potentially be a problem. But if not, then good, you can shred through anyone. In highs, these will possibly be a menace, and I mean, the counterplay is still there. I feel like these will be one of those Hypercharges for heist. How surprising. But it will be really good to burst down enemies because, I mean, during the Hypercharge will just destroy anything after using the 3 supers, which takes a little bit longer than the usual. Most of the times you can destroy people with the Hypercharge right off the bat. With Melody you will have to use the 3 supers. With that being said, I feel like this Hypercharge is probably gonna be like what? 30% rate or maybe even 25% rate. But at least I'm hoping that. I'm assuming that it will be 30%, and if it is 30%, it's probably going to be a B tier Hypercharge. And I just want to give the extra warning that if the nodes, the Hypercharge nodes, only deal 600 damage, then we have a problem. This Hypercharge could potentially be the worst. Next on the list we have Janet, and I feel like Janet, it's like what Nani's Hypercharge should have been: easier to control super. Like, that is a great thing because now you can just stand still and just keep dropping bombs on the enemy, and the bombs, because of the damage boost of the Hypercharge, now deal 2000 damage. That is a lot of damage, not gonna lie. But with that being said, this feels like a very technical Hypercharge, and besides the super being easier to aim, I don't think it will do too much. And honestly, I am thinking that this Hypercharge should probably have a very low charge, actually a very high charge rate, very low cost. So I mean, it depends a lot on the charge rate, as usual. I'm saying that a lot right on this video. But yeah, I don't see this Hypercharge doing too much, but at the same time this could be extremely helpful, and the bombs do deal a lot of damage, so I could see a very good potential for team wipe here. With that being said, I think and hope that this charge rate should be around the 50%, because it does take a while to get the Janet super, and it is somewhat easy to cycle the super if you play well. So I'm gonna give this Hypercharge, I would say, a high B tier if it is a 50% charge rate, because I am honestly maybe even counting too much on that. But yeah, the Hypercharge has its fair potential. Now, in third place, we have Barry, and honestly, at first I was a bit disappointed, but then I realized that not only you summon more puddles with the super and in a wider area, but your actual super and the hitbox and the damage, it's also wider. This would actually make Barry pretty good at sort of assassinating the enemy team and covering a larger area, a way much larger area, for your entire team to heal. So honestly, I see a lot of potential for this Hypercharge, and Barry having that healing trait could potentially make the Hypercharge extremely easy to refill, and Barry can cycle the supers very easy, and this combined with the gadgets that knocks enemies back, I could see Barry becoming very assassin kind of vibe with the Hypercharge, which it could potentially be very dangerous. Not to mention that, I mean, the bonus, I think that he has bonus 25% damage, which will make his super even more deadlier. With this being said, I actually don't think that the charge rate will change too much here, because the amount of area control that this Hypercharge will provide, it should be phenomenal. I'm expecting this Hypercharge to be at most a 30% rate on the charge rate. So it should take at least 3.33 supers to take the Hypercharge. But I could see Supercell doing the mistake of making the charge rate higher than that. With this being said, if the charge rate is 30%, I'm expecting this Hypercharge to be an A tier. It has a lot of potential. It can be a very good Hypercharge to doing clutches, and I mean, the potential, it is very good, and honestly, this is one Hypercharge that I'm very excited about. In second place, we have Gray, and I am very scared of this one. It will either be like Ruff's Hypercharge, which is at high level of play, it will be very strong, but then in casual it will be like Forgotten. I'm hoping that happens. If not, this Hypercharge could be extremely toxic. Like one portal with Gray, it was already in some rare maps or some scenarios, it could be very toxic, but because the portals last beyond the duration of the Hypercharge, and they also give a 1000 shield, man, I am scared. I'm just hoping that it takes like, what, 4 supers to get the Hypercharge? Because in my eyes, this should be a Hypercharge that you could only get once per game. If not, I hope that those portals cannot stack the Hypercharge ones, because boy, I am extremely worried about this Hypercharge. And even if the charge rate was like 20%, getting that one extra portal and it also giving shield, allowing an extremely aggressive play, man, I am worried. I am scared of the potential of this Hypercharge. I just hope that this is like a Ruff's Hypercharge situation. Assuming that the charge rate is like 25%, I'm gonna give this Hypercharge honestly a high A tier, because it's broken. It will be so toxic. Why? Good. And in number 1, we have Eve. And boy, that Hypercharge looks broken, because you spawn hatchlings with that thing like crazy. Absolutely crazy. I swear to God that if the enemy team does not have at least one character that can properly deal with the hatchlings, you can forget it. It's game over. You will just be absolutely overwhelmed with the crazy amount of hatchlings that the Hypercharge can spawn. And the, I would say, very strong side of this thing is that you can just place it safely on the back and you will just get hatchlings going to the enemy team. And the thing is, I think that the gameplay that they showed us was without the mythic gear. And I think that with the mythic gear, the positioning of the hatchlings can actually change, so that you can have one hatchling going directly to the front, which it is even better for the hatchling. So, I mean, I think that this Hypercharge will be very, very strong, although I have to say, matchup dependent. And that is the big downside of this Hypercharge. If it was not for that, then this thing would be an S tier. But for example, characters like Buster, Poco, Tara, I think that they would still have a decent time with the Hypercharge. So obviously depends on the charge rate, but assuming it should be around 40%, because if super does take a while to get, I think that this Hypercharge would be like a high A tier or maybe even an S tier, because there is the delay, not a lot, but there is a couple delay, and I think you will never have enough ammo to deal with all of the Hypercharge hatchlings. So yeah, I honestly cannot wait to see Eve finally becoming helpful, because this Hypercharge, it is for sure going to help Eve a lot in this next meta. And there you have it, all of the Hypercharges ranked from worst to best as fast as possible. And I am not disappointed with this new patch. There are a couple Hypercharges that seem a little toxic, Grace for example, but I mean, honestly, this feels like a very good release of Hypercharges. All of the Hypercharges seem fairly balanced. So yeah, I am pretty happy with this, and I hope you are as well. Write your opinion down in the comments down below, trust me, I will read them, and I'll see ya on the next video.